Today, I want to talk about a truth that might be uncomfortable for some of you, a truth that goes against what we're told is right or proper in relationships. But I'm not here to tell you what's politically correct. I'm here to tell you what actually works, what human psychology reveals about attraction, the raw, unfiltered reality of how women respond to men who appear not to care. And this isn't about being callous or manipulative. It's about understanding the deep psychological mechanisms that drive human attraction. When I say women chase men who act like they don't care, I'm talking about something far more nuanced than simple indifference. I'm talking about a particular stance toward life that signals value, confidence, and self-sufficiency. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how people want what they can't easily have? How we value what seems just beyond our reach? This isn't unique to romantic relationships. It's hardwired into our psychology as human beings. We desire what we perceive as valuable, and we perceive things as valuable when they're not freely available to everyone. When a man acts like he doesn't care, what he's really communicating is that he has options, that his life is complete regardless of whether any particular woman chooses to be part of it. He's demonstrating that he isn't desperate, needy, or dependent on external validation. And paradoxically, this creates intense attraction. I've seen this play out countless times. Men who constantly seek approval, who are always available, who put women on pedestals. These men are often ignored, friend-zoned, or taken for granted. Meanwhile, men who maintain healthy boundaries, who have strong purposes beyond their romantic relationships, who don't adapt their entire lives to suit a potential partner, these men rarely struggle to attract interest. But there's a dangerous misunderstanding here that I need to address immediately. When I say act like you don't care, I don't mean being emotionally unavailable, manipulative, or treating others poorly. Those behaviors don't create genuine attraction. They create toxic dynamics that ultimately lead to pain and disappointment for everyone involved. What I'm talking about is developing genuine independence and self-sufficiency. It's about caring deeply about your own path, your own growth, your own purpose, and being willing to walk that path alone if necessary. It's about understanding that a romantic partner should complement your life, not complete it. The truth is, no one is attracted to neediness. No one is drawn to desperation. These qualities signal low value in the primal parts of our brain that still govern much of our attraction mechanisms. They suggest that there's something lacking in a person, something that makes others instinctively pull away. I remember working with a client, we'll call him a software engineer from the West Coast. This man had everything going for him on paper: successful career, intelligent, kind, financially stable. Yet he couldn't seem to maintain a relationship beyond the first few dates. When we dug deeper into his behavior patterns, the issue became clear. He was approaching dating with an energy of desperation. He would clear his schedule for any potential date, text constantly, agree with everything a woman said, and essentially make his entire life revolve around each new person he met. The result? Women would initially be flattered, but quickly become uncomfortable with the intensity. They sensed something was off, that his interest wasn't based on truly knowing them, but rather on filling a void in himself. By helping him develop a more balanced approach to dating, one where he maintained his own interests, friends, and boundaries, his results transformed completely. Now, I want to be perfectly clear about something. This isn't about games or manipulation. Playing hard to get in a calculated way isn't what creates lasting attraction. Women are incredibly perceptive of inauthenticity. What creates real, sustainable attraction is genuine independence, a life so rich and fulfilling that you genuinely don't need a relationship to complete you. Think about the people in your life who fascinate you the most. Aren't they the ones who have their own passions, their own boundaries, their own sense of purpose? The ones who don't seem overly concerned with how others perceive them? There's something magnetic about people who move through the world on their own terms. When you develop this quality in yourself, something remarkable happens. You start attracting people who are drawn to your authentic self rather than what you can do for them or how much attention you can give them. You start building connections based on mutual respect rather than dependency or obligation. This principle extends beyond the initial stages of attraction. In established relationships, maintaining a healthy degree of independence prevents the relationship from becoming stagnant or codependent. It creates space for both partners to grow, to miss each other, to appreciate what the other brings to the table. I've observed countless relationships where partners gradually subsume their individual identities into the relationship. They stop spending time with friends, abandon hobbies, and essentially make their partner the center of their universe. This might seem romantic on the surface, but it creates a stifling dynamic that eventually suffocates the very attraction that brought them together. Contrast this with couples who maintain healthy independence. They have their own friends, interests, and goals alongside their shared life. They support each other's individual growth rather than demanding constant togetherness. These relationships tend to maintain their spark, their passion, their vitality, even decades in. Now, some of you might be thinking, but isn't this contradicting everything we're taught about love and commitment? Shouldn't we be all in with our partners? And that's a fair question. We're bombarded with cultural messages about soulmates, about finding the one, about two people becoming one. But these romanticized notions often lead to unhealthy expectations and dynamics. True commitment isn't about losing yourself in another person. It's about choosing to share your complete independent self with someone else who's doing the same. It's about walking alongside each other rather than becoming entangled in a way that neither can move freely. The paradox here is fascinating. By being willing to walk away from a relationship that doesn't serve you, you become infinitely more attractive in that relationship. By maintaining your boundaries, your standards, your sense of self, you signal that you're with someone because you want to be, not because you need to be. And that distinction makes all the difference. Let me share an observation from history. Throughout human civilization, the people who have been most desired, most pursued, most sought after, whether in romantic contexts or otherwise, have invariably been those who appeared somewhat unattainable. Those who had something more important to them than being liked or approved of. Those who stood for something beyond themselves. This isn't a modern phenomenon or a cultural quirk. It's deeply embedded in human psychology. We assign value to things and people based partly on their accessibility. Things that are rare, that require effort to obtain, that not everyone can have, these things are inherently more valuable to us. It's why exclusive clubs have waiting lists, why limited edition products sell out immediately, why we're willing to pay more for things that are in short supply. In the context of relationships, this translates to being somewhat selective about who you invest your time and energy in. It means having standards and boundaries. It means being willing to walk away from situations that don't align with your values or goals. And paradoxically, this selectivity makes you more, not less desirable to high-quality potential partners. I want to address something important here. Some might hear this message and interpret it as advocating for emotional withholding or game playing. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. Emotional intimacy, vulnerability, and open communication are vital components of healthy relationships. But these things must be built on a foundation of self-respect and personal boundaries. True confidence, the kind that's genuinely attractive, isn't about putting on a show of not caring. It's about actually caring deeply about yourself, your well-being, your purpose, and your boundaries. It's about understanding your own worth so thoroughly that you don't feel compelled to prove it to others or seek constant validation. I've worked with thousands of individuals on developing this kind of authentic confidence, and the results are consistently transformative, not just in their romantic relationships, but in every area of life. When you stop seeking approval and start living by your own carefully considered values, everything changes. Your posture changes, your voice changes, the way you enter a room changes. And yes, the way others respond to you changes dramatically. Now, I want to acknowledge something that might be uncomfortable for some of you to hear. There are biological underpinnings to these attraction dynamics. Throughout our evolutionary history, women have been naturally selective about their partners for very practical reasons. Pregnancy and child rearing represented enormous investments of time and resources, so choosing a partner who demonstrated strength, resilience, and self-sufficiency was quite literally a matter of survival. While our modern context is vastly different, these deep psychological mechanisms haven't disappeared. They've just been redirected and reshaped by culture. The man who appears completely self-sufficient, who has a clear purpose beyond seeking female attention, who doesn't need validation from others, this man is unconsciously signaling that he can provide security, stability, and protection. And these signals operate below the level of conscious awareness, influencing attraction in profound ways. But here's where many men go wrong. They hear something like women chase men who act like they don't care and interpret it in the most superficial way possible. They start playing mind games, deliberately not texting back, feigning disinterest, treating people poorly, thinking this will make them more desirable. And it might briefly to people with insecure attachment styles who mistake drama for passion, but it won't create healthy, fulfilling relationships with secure, emotionally intelligent partners. The distinction is crucial. Acting like you don't care as a manipulation tactic versus genuinely caring about yourself and your purpose first, and allowing relationships to develop organically around that solid core. The former is a short-term strategy that attracts chaos. The latter is a lifestyle that attracts quality. I've noticed an interesting pattern when speaking about these topics. Men who are already successful with women intuitively understand what I'm talking about. They nod along because they've experienced it firsthand. Men who struggle often initially reject these ideas, insisting that being more attentive, more available, more accommodating should work. But attraction doesn't operate on shoulds. It operates on deeply ingrained psychological mechanisms that don't always align with our modern notions of how relationships ought to function. The truth is, relationships are not a democracy where equal effort at all times leads to optimal outcomes. They're complex dances of pursuit and retreat, of giving and receiving, of vulnerability and strength. And understanding the rhythm of this dance, knowing when to step forward and when to step back, is essential to creating and maintaining attraction. Let me be clear, I'm not suggesting that men should never show interest, never pursue, never make the first move. Quite the opposite. Bold, confident pursuit can be incredibly attractive. But that pursuit must come from a place of genuine desire rather than neediness. It must be an expression of authentic interest rather than a bid for validation or approval. The man who asks for a woman's number because he's genuinely intrigued by her, but who would be perfectly fine if she declined, is operating from a completely different energy than the man who asks because he desperately needs her to say yes to validate his worth. And women can sense this distinction instantaneously, often before the man has even finished speaking. This brings me to another critical point. Acting like you don't care doesn't mean being aloof, distant, or emotionally unavailable once you're in a relationship. It means continuing to prioritize your purpose, your growth, your boundaries, while also being fully present and engaged with your partner. It means loving without desperation, caring without neediness, giving without expectation. In my observations, the healthiest relationships follow a particular pattern. Both partners maintain their independence while choosing to build something together. They have rich, fulfilling lives as individuals that they willingly share with each other. They don't use the relationship to escape themselves or to fix something broken within them. Instead, they come together as two whole people, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Now, some of you might be wondering, but what about women? Doesn't this advice apply to them too? Absolutely. The principles of attraction I'm discussing are fundamentally human, not gender specific. Anyone who makes another person the center of their universe, who abandons their own boundaries and interests for the sake of a relationship, who needs constant reassurance and validation, this person will eventually become less attractive to their partner, regardless of gender. The difference lies in how these dynamics typically manifest. In heterosexual relationships, men more commonly fall into the trap of excessive pursuit and approval seeking, particularly in the early stages. Women more commonly struggle with maintaining boundaries and independence once a relationship is established. But the underlying principle remains the same. Genuine independence and self-sufficiency are universally attractive qualities. I want to address a potential misunderstanding here. When I talk about independence, I'm not advocating for emotional distance or an inability to connect deeply. I'm talking about maintaining a healthy sense of self within the context of a close relationship. The most intimate connections occur between people who are secure enough in themselves to be truly vulnerable with each other. Think about the relationships you admire most. The couples who seem to have that special something after years or decades together. I'd be willing to bet that these aren't relationships where one person has completely subsumed their identity into the others. They're relationships where both partners continue to grow, to challenge each other, to maintain healthy space alongside their togetherness. This balance isn't easy to achieve. Our culture bombards us with unhealthy relationship models, from romantic comedies where obsessive pursuit is portrayed as romantic, to social media where couples present carefully curated images of constant togetherness. We're rarely shown the healthy reality that sustainable passion requires space, that genuine connection flourishes with appropriate boundaries, that desire is maintained through the continued discovery of an ever-evolving partner. I've worked with couples who have been together for decades and still maintain a palpable spark, a genuine desire for each other. Invariably, these couples have figured out how to balance connectedness with independence. They've learned to respect each other's boundaries, to encourage each other's individual growth, to allow each other the space to miss and desire one another anew. This brings me to another critical aspect of not appearing too eager: pacing. Relationships that burn too hot too quickly often burn out just as fast. The man who immediately tries to spend every waking moment with a new romantic interest, who texts constantly, who wants to define the relationship after 3 dates, this man is signaling that he has nothing else of significance in his life. And that's rarely attractive. Contrast this with the man who has a full, engaging life and incorporates a new person gradually. He's genuinely interested, he makes his intentions clear, but he doesn't rearrange his entire existence overnight. He allows the relationship to develop organically, giving both himself and his potential partner the space to evaluate whether they're truly compatible. This creates a slow burn rather than a flash fire, and slow burns tend to last much longer. I remember consulting with a highly successful businessman who couldn't understand why his relationships kept failing. On paper, he seemed to have everything: wealth, status, intelligence, even conventional good looks. But his approach to dating was revealing. As soon as he met a woman he liked, he would shower her with expensive gifts, plan elaborate dates, and essentially try to fast-track intimacy through grand gestures. What he didn't realize was that these behaviors weren't giving women time to develop genuine feelings for him as a person. Instead, they were creating pressure and obligation. By slowing down, by allowing connections to develop more naturally, by giving women space to choose him rather than feeling pursued or purchased, his experiences transformed completely. The principle here extends beyond romantic relationships. Think about friendships. The people who seem desperate for your approval and attention, who are always available, who have no apparent boundaries. Do you value these connections as highly as the ones with people who have full, engaging lives of their own? Or professional relationships. Are you more impressed by the colleague who seems eager to please everyone, or the one who stands firmly by their principles even when it's unpopular? Nature is consistent across contexts. We value what we earn more than what's freely given. We respect those who respect themselves. We're drawn to people who have something compelling in their lives beyond their relationships with us. This isn't manipulation. It's simply understanding human psychology and working with it rather than against it. It's recognizing that healthy attraction cannot be forced or coerced. It can only be invited through genuine self-development and appropriate boundaries. Now, I want to address something important. Some men, upon hearing these principles, swing too far in the opposite direction. They become emotionally unavailable, aloof, even callous, thinking this will make them more attractive. This is a profound misunderstanding of what creates sustainable attraction. Acting like you don't care doesn't mean actually not caring. It means caring about yourself, your purpose, and your boundaries first, so that your care for others comes from a place of abundance rather than need. It means being willing to walk away from situations that don't serve you, not as a manipulation tactic, but as a genuine expression of self-respect. The truly attractive man isn't cold or distant. He's warm, engaged, and present, but from a foundation of inner security rather than neediness. He can express interest, pursue, even show vulnerability, but never in a way that compromises his core values or sense of self. He's willing to be rejected because he knows his worth isn't determined by any one person's response to him. I observed that men often misinterpret women's reactions to their behavior. They show intense interest, get rejected, and conclude that they should have acted more disinterested. But the issue wasn't their interest. It was the energy behind that interest. Was it coming from a place of genuine desire to connect with this specific person, or was it coming from a place of needing validation, approval, or filling a void? Women are remarkably perceptive. They sense the difference between interest that's specific to them as individuals and interest that would be directed at any attractive woman who happened to be available. They can distinguish between genuine confidence and bravado designed to mask insecurity. They can tell when a man's actions are authentic expressions of who he is versus calculated attempts to create a particular impression. This brings me to a crucial point. Authenticity is non-negotiable. You cannot fake not caring as a strategy to make women chase you, at least not for long. What you can do is develop yourself to the point where your sense of self-worth genuinely doesn't depend on any particular woman's interest in you, where you have a purpose that drives you independent of your relationship status, where you have boundaries that you maintain not to manipulate others, but because you value yourself. The process of developing this kind of authentic confidence isn't always comfortable. It requires facing your insecurities, examining your attachments, questioning your motivations. It means being honest with yourself about the ways you might be seeking external validation rather than developing internal security. It means being willing to sit with discomfort rather than immediately seeking relief through others' approval. But this work, this inner development, is what separates men who consistently create powerful attraction from those who are perpetually confused by their romantic results. It's what allows you to show genuine interest without appearing needy, to pursue without desperation, to care deeply without losing yourself. I want to emphasize something that's often overlooked in discussions about attraction. The goal isn't to manipulate others into chasing you. The goal is to become the kind of person who naturally attracts high-quality partners because of your authentic value. The goal is to develop yourself to the point where you can take or leave any particular relationship because you know your worth doesn't depend on it. When you reach this point, something remarkable happens. You stop thinking in terms of strategies and tactics. You stop wondering what to text or when to call or how to act. You simply express your authentic self, maintain your boundaries, and allow relationships to develop naturally. And paradoxically, this straightforward approach creates far more powerful attraction than any calculated strategy ever could. I've watched countless men transform their relationship experiences not by learning new techniques or lines, but by doing the inner work to develop genuine confidence and purpose. These men don't need to pretend not to care. They actually don't base their self-worth on any particular woman's response to them. They're clear about their interest when it exists, but that interest comes from a place of choice rather than need. This brings me to another important distinction. Acting like you don't care doesn't mean being unavailable or uncommitted once you're in a relationship. It means continuing to maintain healthy boundaries, continuing to prioritize your purpose alongside your relationship, continuing to be the man she was attracted to in the first place. One of the most common mistakes I see men make is completely changing their behavior once a relationship is established. The man who had his own life, his own friends, his own interests, who was attractive precisely because of his independence, suddenly becomes available 24/7, cancels plans with friends to be with his partner, and essentially makes the relationship his entire focus. And then he's surprised when the attraction begins to fade. Human nature doesn't change when a relationship status changes. The qualities that created attraction in the beginning are the same qualities that maintain it over time. If your independence and sense of purpose were attractive initially, abandoning those qualities will inevitably reduce attraction, regardless of commitment levels. This is why so many long-term relationships become stagnant. Partners stop being individuals with their own pursuits and become a merged entity without healthy boundaries or separate interests. They stop challenging each other, surprising each other, bringing new energy and experiences into each other's lives. Contrast this with couples who maintain their individuality within their partnership. The man who still has poker night with his friends. The woman who still pursues her passion for photography. The couple who sometimes take separate vacations to pursue individual interests. These relationships tend to maintain their spark because there's always something new to discover about each other. I've counseled many couples who have lost their connection and passion. In almost every case, the path back to desire involves rediscovering themselves as individuals first, rekindling separate interests, rebuilding personal boundaries, remembering who they were before the relationship consumed their identities. And invariably, as they rediscover themselves, they rediscover their attraction to each other. This principle extends beyond the romantic context of the relationship itself. The man who maintains his purpose, who continues to grow and develop, who brings new ideas and experiences into the relationship, this man remains interesting and attractive to his partner year after year, decade after decade. Think about the people in your life who command respect without demanding it. They typically share certain qualities. They have clear boundaries. They're guided by internal principles rather than external approval. They're willing to stand alone rather than compromise their values for acceptance. These same qualities create and maintain romantic attraction. The message I'm sharing today isn't about tricks or manipulation. It's about development, about becoming the kind of man who naturally attracts the right partners because of who he authentically is, not because of some act he's putting on. It's about understanding that true attraction can't be forced or manipulated. It can only be evoked through genuine value and appropriate boundaries. I want to be clear. This isn't about being someone you're not. It's about becoming the best, most authentic version of yourself. It's about developing genuine confidence, purpose, and boundaries, not as attraction strategies, but as essential components of a fulfilling life. The relationship benefits are simply a natural byproduct of this development. And here's what's fascinating. When you reach this point of authentic self-development, you stop worrying about whether women are chasing you. You become far more selective about who you spend your time with. You evaluate potential partners based on their compatibility with your purpose and values, rather than focusing on whether they're interested in you. You recognize that the right relationship will enhance your life, not define it.